Hey everybody, welcome back to another daily creative challenge. I'm Jesús Ramirez, and today we are back with the Photoshop Daily Creative Challenge number 5. And this challenge is going to be all about removing objects from photos in Photoshop. If this is your first time watching us, then thank you for being here. If you've been following along with the previous week, welcome back. Before we get started, as always, I want to mention the Daily Creative Challenge page that you can log into so that you can follow along. And let me bring that up for you guys. This is the Daily Creative Challenge page. And if you haven't been here already, please check it out. It's on behance.net/daily creative challenge. And the URL is here, behance.net/daily creative challenge. And what you need to do is go into this page and make sure that you click on the click here to register button. And the reason that you want to do that is so that you can get notifications on your Creative Cloud app. So that's very, very important to do if this is your first time that you're following along with us. As I said, if you're coming back for the second week, I appreciate you being here with me again. I see a lot of familiar names on the chat, as always. I see Claudia from Print My Soul. I see Kata Jones, as usual. Kathleen, hey Kathleen, how you doing? Anna, Ray, a whole bunch of familiar faces. So thank you so much for being with me again this week. Also, something important that I want to mention is that if you're new, that you should also log into the Discord community page. It's right here at the bottom. You can click on Join Us on Discord, or you can go on this URL so that you can follow the stream through Discord. That way you can upload your images, your projects, and so that me and the Adobe team could give you feedback on that. Let me show you what that looks like. If you go into the that link that I just showed you guys, you'll see the Discord page. And from the Discord page, you will be able to submit your work on the design feedback page. You can see some of the work that people have been submitting. These are some of the movie posters and album covers, double exposure effects, and everything that we've been working with so far. As I said, if you submit your work, myself, the Adobe team, and users just like you, it could give you feedback on the design that you submit. And you can also ask any questions that you like. You can also go into the tips and tricks page for Photoshop tips and tricks. And as I said, you can ask questions. So I highly, highly recommend it. You'll see people there like the mentors that are actually, some of them are in the chat now. We have Tim, Claudia, Sam, Voodoo Val, Adobe, the Adobe team, and myself. So again, check out the Discord page. Also, for this stream and for all the streams, I'm using Photoshop CC 2019, and I highly recommend that you download Photoshop CC 2019 if you're not using it already. You can click on the Get Photoshop link to either download the new version of Photoshop onto your computer or at least get a free trial. It's a 7-day free trial, so I highly recommend you getting that if you're using any older version of Photoshop. However, for today's stream, an older version will be okay to follow along with, but there might be some subtle differences. We don't have much time as usual. We have about 30 minutes, maybe less than that, to go through the project that we're working with. And on this stream, we're gonna be removing people and objects from photographs. And we're gonna start with a simple example that will show you how you can use the Content Aware tool and the Clone Stamp tool to remove objects from a photo. Then we're gonna use a more advanced method that requires a little more planning, a little more foresight, but it gives you much, much better results. For the second technique, you will have to go out and take some photos, and I'm gonna show you how you can merge them together to remove people and distracting objects from photo. But first, let's get started with the first example, and that is this image here. This is obviously a screenshot of the show Game of Thrones. It's a screenshot from last night's episode, and no spoilers in the chat, please. Some of you that seen the episode last night might have noticed that they accidentally left a coffee cup right there. on the actual show, this coffee cup was shown. It was probably a cup like this one, and they just left it on the table. So what we're gonna do in this stream is remove it using Photoshop tools, like I said, the clone stamp tool, and then we're also gonna use the content aware fill to try to remove that cup. So let me know in the comments if you guys saw last night's episode, no spoilers, and let me know if you guys caught that coffee cup during last night's episode. So I'm gonna look at the chat really quick and see what people are saying. But anyway, somebody said, need the new version of Premiere Stat, Mark. Yeah, exactly. The new version of Premiere, if I'm not mistaken, does have content-aware fill, which will allow you to remove something from video, much like you would in Photoshop. Wendy says that she saw it last night. Somebody says, Sam says that they need to hire me to take care of these blunders. Yeah, it'd be great. I would love to work for Game of Thrones, but that wouldn't be a long-lasting job. I think they're actually done with it. So, yeah, I wouldn't have a job for much long. But anyway, so we're gonna remove that coffee cup from this photo using Photoshop tools. And the tool that we're gonna start out with is one of the most simple ones to use. That's the clone stamp tool, which is found here. And all you need to do with the clone stamp tool is hover over anywhere on your image, hold Alt or Option on the Mac, and click to set a sample source. And if I increase the size of my brush by using the right bracket key, you can see the sample source. See, I just held Alt, clicked, and I have a sample source. And I can start painting with that. So now it looks like I have, like twins standing next to each other. But what I'm gonna do in this case is just clone out the coffee cup using pixels that are similar from the table. And you always wanna work non-destructively, which means that you can come back and make adjustments or delete your adjustments later if you want to. So let me show you what I mean by that. I'm going to click on the new layer icon to create a new layer. Then in the options bar under sample, I'm going to select all layers. Then I'm going to make a smaller brush. And I'm just going to sample the table by holding Alt, Option on the Mac. I'm going to click, and I'm just going to start painting that cup away. And now the Game of Thrones scene does not have that coffee cup. And like I said, it's non-destructive, so you can see the before and the after if I click on that eye icon. So that's the importance of working non-destructively. You can always click and drag that layer away if you want to and delete it. You can always adjust it. So non-destructive is the way to work. So I'm looking at some of the comments here. Anyway, it's a lot of funny stuff going on in the comments, so I appreciate that. I already did that. Umberto did the exact same one. I'm guessing he's referring to this. He must have done something like this already. Another way in which you can remove an object in Photoshop is by using the content-aware technology. And if you go into Edit, actually, I need to first make a selection. Sorry about that. You need to go into the lasso tool or any selection tool and just make a selection around the object that you want to remove. So I'm going to make a selection around this cup, and then I can go into Edit, Fill, and under Contents, select Content Aware and press OK. And you can see that Photoshop removed that cup just like that. So that's another option that you have. Also, you can go into Edit, Content Aware Fill, which will bring up the new Content Aware Fill dialog box, and it gives you a whole lot more options on how that blend is created. So you can start adjusting the different settings here. I think that the default setting was actually pretty good, so I can just press OK and it creates that fill. The advantage of using the new fill dialog box, besides having options and settings that the original fill dialog box didn't give you, is that you can work non-destructively. Notice how it created a new layer as opposed to making the fill on the original layer. So it's a good way of working non-destructively. So I recommend checking out the content-aware fill dialog box, which is found in a new version of Photoshop. If you're using an old version of Photoshop, you only have the fill window. You can bring the fill window up by going into Edit, and fill, and it looks like I have something enabled. I don't know what it is, but it's okay. Let me just select the actual layer and go and make a selection. I can select anything and go into edit, fill, and there it is. So that's a good way of bringing up the fill dialog box window. Jesus, I can't pronounce that today. But anyway, so we're gonna move on to a more complex way of removing things in Photoshop. We have been looking at removing things with removing an object from one single photo, which, as you can see, can require a lot of manual labor. In this case, we were just removing a cup, so it's very, very easy to do. It's sitting on a table and it doesn't have a lot of detail. But if we needed to remove the people from this scene, maybe we wanted to remove Khaleesi and oh my god, I forget his name. Somebody in the chat tell me what his name is. I can actually remember his I was gonna say I can remember his real name, but I can't even remember his real name. You Know Nothing, Jon Snow. That's his name, Jon Snow. If I wanted to remove them from the photo, it would be much, much more difficult to do because the content aware fill wouldn't have enough source pixels to analyze the background and generate a fill, and it would be very difficult to do to clone out every single character from this frame. So it will be a lot of manual labor. It wouldn't be that realistic. So what you need to do is, if you're gonna take an image, a photo, and you want to remove everybody from the background or the distracting things from the background, there's one technique that you can use when you're shooting the photos. That is, before you bring it into Photoshop. In Photoshop, we have something called stack modes. They're a lot like blending modes. Blending modes are things that allow you to blend layers together. And that's what stack modes do. They allow you to blend photos together, images together, document files together. And one of the algorithms found with stack modes is called the median stack mode. And the median stack mode allows you to analyze multiple images with the same content or similar content, and it removes pixels that are not constant. So if you shoot a photo of a building and there's people walking by in front of the building, the pixels that will be constant will be the building, and the pixels that are not constant will be the people walking by. So I can take several photos, merge them together, apply that algorithm, and Photoshop will automatically remove the non-constant pixels, so the people and cars walking by, and it would leave everything else, the building. So let me show you an example of that. Let me just open up this folder. And several years ago, I was in Paris, France, and I was walking through the Louvre Museum, which I'm sure a lot of you recognize. Some of you might actually be. And Paris, France. And as you can see, when you are in a place like this, you do get to see a lot of tourists. And I have more photos to show you. So you can see that I have all these pictures that I took of people walking through this scene. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take Photoshop, and I'm going to take all these images and apply that algorithm that I mentioned. It's going to remove the people. The important thing to do is, when you're trying out this technique, is that you need to be very, very still or have a tripod. I didn't have a tripod when I was taking these images. So I was just with my cell phone, this one here, and I stood there and I took a photo, waited about 20-30 seconds, took another photo. I took about 15. What I was doing is I was keeping an eye on the group of people that were in the scene, and I was trying to make sure that everybody was moving. I waited a little longer sometimes if I noticed that a group of people stood there and didn't really move. So the key is to have people move throughout the scene. They can't just stand there. So if it's like a big, huge crowd of like a concert, for example, you can take 1,000 photos, they're never gonna move. But if it's a scene where people are just moving and walking through, you can take several photos, merge them together in Photoshop really, really quickly, and have everybody disappear. So let me show you how that works. I'm going to go into Photoshop, and I can just go into File, Scripts, Statistics. And with Statistics, I can bring up this window. And as I mentioned, the stack mode, the algorithm that we're going to use is called median. So we're going to select the median algorithm. Then we're going to select the files that we're going to work with. I have them in a folder, so I'm going to select the folder option, and I'm going to click on browse, and then I have it on my desktop and is the Louvre Museum folder, and it's going to load up 14 images that I took. And remember, I didn't have a tripod. I was with my cell phone. I was holding my cell phone as steady as I could. But even then, it's moving a little bit. I'm breathing, there's wind, there's, subtle movements. And for this to work, everything needs to be aligned. So I'm going to check this box to tell Photoshop to try to align those images for me. So Photoshop is going to distort each of these images to try to align them. It's better if you have a tripod, but as you will see, it's not necessary, but a tripod will be the way to go. So I'm going to press the OK button, and Photoshop is going to load all those photos as layers in the layers panel here on the right-hand side. And you will see that it will put them all into a smart object, which is a container that can hold multiple layers to apply effects, distortions non-destructively. It will apply that stack mode, and as you will see, it will remove everybody from the photo, and I just have the background. So it's pretty cool, as you can see. Let me just look at the comments, and I'm just curious to know how many people knew this technique. And also, who's got an eagle eye and can spot some issues with this technique? So I'll give it a second. Let me just see if there's any questions or comments. Cars can walk. Yes, cars can walk. Haven't you seen Transformers? Are we getting rid of Starbucks coffee? We already got rid of the Starbucks coffee cup. But anyway, so with this technique, you can stack all those images together, remove the pixels that are not constant, and it blends the image together. Now, the issue comes up, and I haven't seen anybody mention it in the comments at least yet, is that we have really, really blurry clouds. You'll see why in a moment. Also, there's issues in the corners of the image because Photoshop was rotating the images, scaling them a little bit so they could match the, they could all be aligned. And also, if I zoom in, you'll notice here that there's still a couple body parts of people that didn't quite move. So I'm going to show you how to fix all of that really, really easily. First, we'll just remove the arm or leg or whatever this is. So we'll create a new layer, and we could use the clone stamp tool like we did in the previous example, but I'm just going to show you a different tool now. We're going to use the spot healing brush tool. Make sure that sample all layers is selected, and just I'm going to use the normal mode, and I'm going to click and drag to remove that. So that's before and after. And I know that there's another leg or something right here that I'm just going to click and drag to remove, and just like that I remove those body parts. If I double click on the hand tool when I'm zoom in, the image gets fit on screen. So you can see the before and the after just by clicking on this icon. The next issue that I pointed out was the clouds. So clouds are moving. So if you have an image of water, clouds, maybe trees, flags, things like that, things that should be in the scene but are moving, you might get an issue like this one where you'll get that ghosting effect, and it's really, really easy to fix. I'm going to double click on the smart object to open it up in a new tab, and you can see that all the images are in here. And as I disable the layers, you can see that the clouds are moving, which is why I got that ghosting effect. And the way to remove it is actually quite simple. You can select the rectangular marquee tool, make a selection around the top of the image. It doesn't matter what layer I select. I'm just gonna select the one on top, but if there was clouds that I like better in a different layer, I can certainly select those. Then I'm gonna go into Edit, Copy Merge, go back into my working document and select Edit, Paste Special, Paste in Place. The reason I'm selecting Paste in Place as opposed to just Paste is because Paste pastes things in the center of the document, and I don't want to have to align that image. So if I go into Edit, Paste Special, Paste in Place, I actually paste that in the area that it should be. I'm pasting it in place. So I would rather do that than align it by hand. So I can just click and drag this to the top part of the layer stack, and I can create a layer mask by clicking on this icon here, and I can select the brush tool and then paint with black. And the reason I'm doing this is because you'll notice that we have a seam. We have a seam on the pyramid, and I want to soften that seam so that it's not noticeable. So with a layer mask, you can paint with black to hide and white to reveal. That's why the layer mask by default is white, because it's revealing everything in that layer. What I'm doing now is painting with black to hide the contents of that layer. You'll notice that my foreground color is black. So when I paint with black, I hide those pixels and I'm smoothing that edge. See that? Before and after. And the next step is to crop the image. I'm going to hold off on that because I want to do one other adjustment before I do that. And with the top layer selected, I'm going to hold Shift, click on the bottom layer to select all the layers, and then I'm going to right click and select Convert to Smart Object to put that into one single layer. It's really a container containing all those layers, and again I can apply filters, distortions, and adjustments non-destructively. And the effect that I'm going to apply is the camera raw filter. And that brings up, of course, the camera raw filter. Here it is. And now I can treat this entire composite, it's really a composite, multiple images making one image, as a single image. So I can adjust the highlights of the image. I can maybe increase the shadows, add clarity, which is contrast in the midtones to give it more of a pop. Adjust vibrance, which is a smart way of adding saturation. Vibrance protects already saturated pixels and skin tones, so I recommend using vibrance before saturation when you want to boost up the colors of an image. Also, if you are ever sharpening an image in Photoshop, when you sharpen, you really can't tell what you're doing. Sure, you can see a sharpening effect, but what is it really affecting? If you want a visual representation of what you're affecting in Photoshop, you can hold the Alt key, which is the Option key on Windows, and click and drag on the masking slider. Remember, mask, white reveals, black conceals. So if I hold Alt and click on masking, everything is white, which means that the sharpening effect is applied to the entire image. If I click and drag to the right, the sharpening effect is only applied to the edges, and you can adjust what the range of edges that effect will be applied to. So I can maybe bring it pretty high up because I don't really want any sharpening effect to the clouds, and that gives me a better result. Also, when you're adding sharpening, always view the image at 100% because any other view level could give you misleading results. So I'll press OK. And the final step will be to just crop the image. I'm going to click and drag on the corner handles. I selected the crop tool, of course, and I can just rotate it to straighten the horizon a bit and just crop it and click on the check mark. And that's my final image. So I'm really looking forward to see what you all come up with. Once again, you can do this with a phone. You can do this with your camera, with your tripod. The key is that you need to make sure that the camera doesn't move at all, would be ideal with a tripod, or hold very, very still, and just take multiple photos and make sure that everybody has a chance to move throughout the scene. And I think you'll get really, really good results. As you saw in this case, the blends are not always perfect. You need to do some fine tuning. So every image will give you different challenges, but I hope that with the skills that you learned today, you'll be able to tackle those and get good looking images without any people or cars going through. Once you have completed your image, what you want to do is go into File, Export, and export the image as, and you can export it either as a PNG or JPEG. I'll just quickly export it as a JPEG. Click on Export All, and I'll just call it Museum, and I'll save it on my desktop so that it's easy for me to find. And I've saved the image. Now I can go into Behance.net, and from Behance I can actually, I need to sign into my Behance account. I thought I was already signed in. So let me just sign in. And from here, still not signed in. That's weird. There you go. I'm signed in. Once I signed in, I can click on create a project to create a project, and I can bring this image in. I'm going to click on upload files, select the image, and there it is. After that, I can click on the continue button, and from the continue button, I can scale the image if I need to. I can give it a name. I'll just call mine museum, and click on crop and continue. The important thing is that under discoverability, you need to add the keyword, which is found on the Behance.net Daily Creative Challenge page. The keyword is PS Daily Challenge. Notice that PS is in capital letters, and add that here. You can then just add a comma to accept that keyword, and you can publish it or save it. And the reason that you want to do that is so that when we search for that keyword, we get to see your project. So these are the projects that people have been submitting. You can see the comic book effect, which was on day 1. We can see the double exposure effect, the album cover, everything that we've been working on with these daily creative challenges. If you are just tuning in for the first time, you can go back and watch the recordings and submit those challenges as well. Don't forget about the Ask a Question section on Discord. This will allow you to submit, design feedback, not ask a question. You should go into design feedback and you can submit the work that you've created so that myself, the Adobe team, and other members of the community can help you with any questions that you have or just give you feedback on the work that you created. So log into Discord. If you don't know how to get there, you can just follow this link here. And with this link, you should have access to the Discord page. I just want to say thank you for being with me one more time at the Adobe Daily Creative Challenge. I'll be here again at 11:30 a.m. tomorrow and for the rest of the week, all the way up until Friday. So we have a lot more challenges, and I look forward to seeing everybody here again tomorrow. Let me see. I haven't looked at the chat. And Jesus, can we use an existing photo that we have, or do we have to take a new photo? As a question by Anna, I'm assuming that that's a question regarding the stack modes. If it's for stack modes, you're gonna have to take new photos probably, but you can use an old photo and then maybe use clone stamp or content over fill. But anyway. But yeah, thanks so much everybody for being here. I really appreciate you. I'll see you guys again tomorrow at 11:30 a.m. Pacific. Thank you so much for being with me, and I will see you guys very soon. Thanks.